I'm talking to Phil Brooks, aka CM Punk. Thanks for chatting with me today.
AKA Ricky Rabies.
AKA Ricky Rabies. That's right. That's right. We'll get to that. But this show is called Heels. So I think a good question to start with is, in your opinion, what makes a good heel?
Oh man, a variety of different things. Obviously, heel is a villain. Heel is a bad guy. A bad guy or a girl can take many, many forms. But really, it's somebody that can push your buttons. It's somebody that you want to see in the wrestling world get beat up. In the real world, it's somebody that you don't wish good things on. You might not wish bad things on them either, but you don't want anything good to happen to them. But when I was in wrestling, I would always be honest, and I felt that was always a really good way to piss people off. And if you twist and you don't lie to the people right away, you give them A, B, and C, and you tell the truth, and then D, E, and F, you can maybe twist things and lie and fib a little bit, and then they're pulling their hair out and they want to slash your tires and try to stab you. But I always thought the more authentic and true the bad guy was, the better they were. But also on the flip side of that is, pro wrestling is a wacky world. The more outlandish and outrageous a bad guy is, sometimes it works.
Absolutely. I agree with all of that. So I know at this point in your acting career, you've done a lot of work in like the horror genre, but how did it feel to get casted in a role that, it's a wrestling drama series, which they don't really come around too often?
Yeah. Match made in heaven, right? Not only did I get to flex my acting muscles, but I get to be involved in a world that I know like the back of my hand, right? So it was cool to be able to draw on the experiences and the knowledge that I had from a lifetime of wrestling to be able to funnel that into a character and bring a character to life via acting.
Yeah. So your character, as you mentioned, is a popular indie circuit veteran named Ricky Rabies. Well, one, did you help come up with this character? And two, did this character perhaps remind you of any wrestlers you've met in the ring during your earlier indie days, or someone maybe you've seen on the road?
So I was fortunate they let me play with it. I didn't come up with any of the wardrobe or anything like that. So they gave me like the shell of Ricky Rabies, and they were like, "You do you." So obviously, they presented me with essentially an empty glass, and I got to fill it how I deemed necessary. And you better believe that I drew upon real life people that I've shared locker rooms with up and down the highways and byways of America. And if you're a wrestling fan, if you watch the show, you'll be able to pick out different homages to different guys, whether it's my accent or how I say certain things, catchphrases, how I act. I think there's a lot of fun Easter eggs in there in the Ricky Rabies character for wrestling fans.
So as I mentioned, Heels is about an indie wrestling company set in a small town in Georgia. And some of the conflict that goes on throughout the show is this idea of staying and building what they have or making it out of the small town onto a bigger wrestling company. In your opinion, what are some positives and negatives to both situations?
Well, to me, what makes the show great is the backdrop is professional wrestling, right? This could have been a Friday Night Lights. This could have been about, kids playing high school football, waiting to get to college, or do they jump right to the NFL? So at its heart, it's a story about family and it's a drama. But, there's pros and cons, being a big fish in a little pond is great. Wanting to spread your wings and find out if you can conquer the world and move on to quote unquote bigger and better things is great. I've been and I've done both of those things. So that's why this story overall of this television show really appeals to me, and I hope everybody gets the scope of that. I'm waiting to see everybody find a character that they can relate to in this show, because I think it's full of them.
Piggybacking off of that, is there a character other than Ricky Rabies that you gravitate towards?
The story between Jack and Alexander, I think, is going to resonate I said Jack and Alexander.
Ace.
I'm mixing up character names and real life names. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack and Ace, Alexander and Steven. I think that resonates with me. You know, they're living in the shadow of their father. They're trying to both step out of it, but they're both trying to do it their way. It's my turn. No, it's your turn. You know, you're too old. You're too young. You know, you had your shot. You're not wise enough. It's Cain and Abel. You know, it's one of the oldest stories ever told, but I don't know if it's been told with this backdrop of professional wrestling. So I think that's the spice on top of the sizzle on top of the steak. You know.
Absolutely. So another big theme throughout the show is this idea of kayfabe and the separation of a man's character in the ring from who they really are. And in your case, with being CM Punk and all, you're known for this very real, authentic emotion and intensity that you display on the mic and in the ring. So how big of a separation is there really between Phil Brooks and CM Punk, or how do you navigate that alter ego, if you will?
I don't know. It's a great question. I don't think we have the time to discuss that really. It's because the CM Punk thing, it's never like I was a real gimmick, right? And when I say gimmick, I'm talking about like in Memphis. You know, Memphis was a kind of a gimmick heavy territory, you know, because you had the hero, Jerry Lawler, who I will draw parallels to CM Punk. You know, Lawler was a dude. What you saw is what you got. He could be babyface, he could be heel, but Lawler wasn't like the guys he wrestled. He wasn't Kamala, right?
Right.
Kamala was a Ugandan giant. He's from the wilderness in Uganda. He's an African savage. You know, obviously Sugar Bear Harris wasn't walking into 7-Eleven with stars and moons painted out his belly.
Yeah.
There's a distinction between, you know, who that man was and who he was in the ring, but there really wasn't with Jerry Lawler. He's the king.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wasn't this outlandish gimmick, and neither was CM Punk. CM Punk was a guy, I always tell people, nobody has ever really picked up on this. CM Punk was like the Ferris Bueller of pro wrestling.
Oh, interesting.
Especially like 2010, 2011. You know, I was kind of the guy who people could more relate to than some of the outlandish characters and gimmicks. And there'd be a wink and a nudge here and there. And another, I mean, this is how Vince always explained myself to me. He's like, "You're Cool Hand Luke." And I was like, "Okay, Vince." You know, I think the more dynamic characters are the ones that are closer to real life because you can relate to them. I can't relate to The Undertaker in a sense that he's an undead zombie who feels no pain, right?
Right.
But I can relate to Jerry Lawler getting punched in the face by Bill Dundee, you know, because I've been punched in the face by Bill Dundee. Like, that's neither here nor there. You know, it's just more of a real life person. And I think it helped me blur the line between, well, who's the character, who's the real guy.
I totally agree. I think that's why people gravitate towards you so much. So during the show, there's a lot of butting heads when it comes to script and promo writing and the creative, which, as you know, in wrestling is everything. My question for you is, what has been your method for promo writing and creating those intense storylines that you're so well known for?
Well, I'm a real dude, and you know, a lot of people ask why are a lot of the biggest movie stars in the world today former pro wrestlers or current pro wrestlers or whatever. And I really think it's because without training for the job, we're the people that train for the job more than a lot of people who train for the job. You know, we're doing live television every week, 365 days. You know what I mean? Like it's nonstop. So really, when you boil it down, it's theater. That's what pro wrestling is. It's live theater, and it gets physical. But I was always a promo guy, and I would think of a couple things that I maybe wanted to say, but really what helped grow things and helped me craft promos was the people. I couldn't know which direction I was going to go until the people would point me in that direction. I was very much a guy who read the room, you know, and I think some of the greats were really, really good at this. Terry Funk, Eddie Guerrero, two guys who could read the room. They could listen to a crowd, feel the energy, feel if it was, you know, more kids and moms, or if it was predominantly a guy, you know, guys, and they would craft their promo or their match based on what the crowd was. Because if I'm like, I'm making hamburgers and I come out and the crowd's vegan, they're not going to buy what I'm selling. So why would I try to force feed them something that they don't want? So the live audience and the live crowd was always paramount in me figuring out what I was going to say and what direction I was going to take things.
Do you have a favorite promo that you've done that kind of comes to mind?
Man, I have a lot, and that might sound, you know, kind of egotistical, but that was always my thing, you know. And I think you could always play with people's emotions with the microphone a lot more than you could in the ring. But unless you were like a super black belt master of pro wrestling, you know, because that's what it is. It's about playing with people's emotions and trying to elicit a response and get them to come along for the ride. And I could always do that both in the ring and with my promos. But with the promos, it was just a lot more fun because I wasn't getting beat up while I was doing it, you know?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to narrow down one particular one, because it always comes down to what the situation was, what town I was in, who I was in the ring with, or whether I was solo or what. But off the top of my head, you know, me going one-on-one with The Rock, January of, I think it was 2012.
Yep.
I think maybe 2013. It was a pretty big deal. You know, I was a guy who was tasked to fill, I think, on that night, 6 or 7 segments of a television show. And I think a lot of other people would have folded under pressure, but I went out there and, you know, I had a great partner, right? Nobody's better than The Rock.
Oh, no.
And so that one, I think, might be up there in my top 3.